Welcome to this pop-up podcast episode. I'm thrilled to welcome Paul Browning onto the show. Paul, thanks for jumping in today.
Oh, quite an absolute pleasure, Leanne. It's great to actually meet you. So thank you for your time.
Likewise. And look, we had a mutual connection here. Hello to Alex Rados. When we caught up, he was like, you've got to talk to Paul.
Oh, gosh, he's too kind, isn't he, Alex? But he's an extraordinary guy as well. He's got a great story and what a great teacher he is. So, yeah, the adoration is mutual.
Oh, that's lovely. Now, I'm really curious because, there's so many things we could talk about. You've had your own career pivot. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's been an interesting journey and not necessarily one that I chose. It was chosen for me, but nonetheless, my background is I trained as a primary teacher. So I taught little kids for a number of years, and then I became the founding and principal of a school in Canberra called Bergman Anglican School. And I grew that school from 24 students to 1,000 students in about 10 years. 3,000 on the waiting list. And when I left, we're about to open a second campus. And that school today is about 1,800 students. And then in the middle of 2008, I moved to Brisbane, where I headed up St. Paul's School. And I was a headmaster there for 15 years and finished that position late 2023 under an interesting situation, but have now pivoted to starting a business. So moving into the corporate world, but still in the education space. So that's been a really interesting space for me. It's taught me lots of new things. I've learned lots of new skills and learning every single day, but really quite exciting journey as well.
So cool. I think we've got interesting because you've come from education moving into corporate. I've come from corporate and I also do education. So we're kind of just
there's an overlap in the Venn diagram there.
Yeah, that's right. So tell us about your company.
The business.
What do we do? What inspired starting your own business?
Look, as a school principal, there was lots of problems I was trying to solve in education over my time as principal for 25 years. And really, at the end of the day, it's all about students. And so it should be. Schools should be all about the students. But what is really evident as we move into a world that's dominated by AI, and we all know that AI is not taking over the world, but it's transforming every facet of our lives at an increasing pace. Organisations like the World Economic Forum say that the number one skill young people need to have is to be able to think creatively. Employers are looking for people who have skills, not necessarily qualifications. Schools don't actually teach for skills like creative thinking. And in actual fact, schools are very, very good at conditioning the creative thinking out of the young people. So there's a really interesting piece of research that was done in 1968 by George Land for NASA. He was employed by NASA to develop a creativity test. He found 98% of 5-year-olds score at genius level on the creativity test. But by the age of 15, only 12% score genius. Schools condition this vital skill set out of young people. Ken Robinson, the all-time greatest TED Talk, do schools kill creativity? It's true. So for the last 15 years, my colleagues and I, who work at Vividus previously in schools, have developed a way of teaching that actually teaches for creative thinking. So changing the activity of the teacher so they're not just delivering the curriculum, but they're also activating a child's creative intelligence, developing that skill set they need to thrive in the world dominated by AI. But more importantly than that, more excitingly is, I was asked by parents a number of years ago, how do I know if my child comes to this school that they're going to be more creative in their thinking? Great question. So we've been working with the University of Melbourne, their assessment research centre, for the last 3 years, and we've developed assessment tools so we can actually now not only teach for creative thinking, but we also can assess it and report on it. So students can exit school with a credential from the University of Melbourne that shows how good they are at solving complex problems, collaborating with other people, asking good questions, the skill sets that employers are actually looking for. So that's a really exciting piece for us. It's that whole package of how do we transform education so it's actually applicable for this current world in which we live.
That's brilliant. I don't have kids, but I definitely think about curriculum a lot for some reason, just in terms of even when I reflect back on high school, what did I actually learn?
Everyone sits down at the dinner table and starts talking about curriculum, Leanne. I'm a bit worried about
I just don't understand all the skills that we need to live and be effective. We're just not taught in school. Even creative thinking, financial management, just stuff like that are just You actually really have to be into personal development or have a good mentor or a guide or a parent that just,
Exactly.
kind of
And there
feeds
are
you that.
so many people who have become entrepreneurs, started their own businesses.
Yeah.
Where did they learn those skills? Yeah, they learned them in spite of school. They learned them outside of school.
Yeah.
Why aren't schools helping them with develop the skills that they need to actually do those sorts of things, to become an entrepreneur, to start their own business, to work for a company, to do research? We should be preparing young people to thrive when they leave school. And schools at the moment just aren't doing that. So that's the
Yeah.
problem that we're trying to solve, and we've solved it in Vividus.
Amazing. And it's even going back to what you said around creativity. I was working with a corporate client, a big global company, and I was, I guess my job is I try to weave in creativity without actually calling it, without naming it. Because even when
Yes.
people hear the C word,
Yeah.
they just like I'm not creative, and you get instant resistance. But if you kind of like weave it in like a bit of a gesture, and they realize they're being creative after the fact, and you can kind of like, hey, by the way, did you notice you were,
Yeah.
tapping into a different side of you that is outside of the spreadsheet role and the constraints that you live in. But the second, I have used creativity in the past. Even innovation can sometimes be a bit tainted. People are like, I'm not innovative. It's just an instant wall that's been, like you say, kind of trained out of them by.
It is, and you're
Mhm.
right. I mean, we've come up with that sort of comments from people all the time. It's because we're conditioned as people to think of creativity in a certain way. So if you ask schools, are your students being taught creativity? Oh, yes, we've got an arts program. Yeah, we teach art and we've got music, and yes, they get that opportunity to become creative. But we also teach mathematics, by the way, and we teach a bit of science too. Yeah, creativity is not found in the arts. I'm sorry. What
Yeah.
we're talking about here is the ability to think creatively.
Mm.
Uh, and that can be embedded in mathematics, in science, in English, in every curriculum area. It's the ability to see problems or ask complex questions and then find connections between what you've learned and generate new and novel ideas that have value and worth within the context of the person, the way the person finds themselves. So, yes, the reality is all of us are born with the ability to be creative. We might not be able to play music or draw. I can't draw. I can't play music. But in actual fact, I still am creative.
Yeah.
But schools are very successful at conditioning it out of us and making us think and believe that creativity is this, when in actual fact it's that. The other point I'd like to make there
Mm.
too is Tina Selig has published a really great piece of work called The Invention Cycle, where basically she says entrepreneurship begins with the imagination. And then after the imagination comes creativity, then innovation, then entrepreneurship, where you're actually applying your idea and it's seeing an effect or an impact, it's adding value. And then it starts again, a new idea, imagination, creativity, innovation, entrepreneurship. It's a really lovely, lovely way of illustrating what it looks like. Innovation begins with creativity. Entrepreneurship begins with innovation. Yeah, the
Yeah.
foundation there is our imagination.
Yeah, and often I guess our job is to help people like provoke imagination as well and
Yes.
stimulate that.
Yeah.
Uh,
And every 5-year-old, like, every
oh,
4-year-old, imaginary friend, they can play for hours with a cardboard box. Yeah.
yeah.
By the time they're 8, I'm bored, mum. What am I? Yeah, I'm bored because we fill their day with structured things and there's no space for that time to be imaginative.
I want to talk about that, filling their day with structured time, structured activities, right? Because what I hear from a lot of leaders is this thing around discretionary effort, this whole pushback around that's not in my job description. And it's like such an interesting time. It's like in 2025, I know, yes, it's important to have expectations on a role, but guess what? Things are changing so quickly. These random things might actually be part of the job that you need to do. And so to be able to, I guess, curate that. It's going against what you taught in schools, which is I have this assignment, it's due in 2 weeks. Like it's a whole other mindset when you look into like ambiguity and
Yeah.
creating your own impact, right? And just creating that entrepreneurial spirit within is not only for entrepreneurs, it's for anyone that is in any type of leadership role at the moment. You've got to be kind of open to what opportunities are ahead, which is a different mindset.
You're opening the door, Leanne, to all sorts of different things that we can actually comment on. But I'd probably make the primary comment that we're all born with the ability to be creative. And if we can express that creativity in some sort of form, then we actually feel more fulfilled as people, because you might recognize that in the understanding that we all want to make a difference. We all want our life to mean something. And really, what that is coming from is our innate ability to be creative. and come up with new ideas or opportunities to actually make an impact, to make a difference. So our lives then have value and worth, and we feel like we've made that contribution. So you send an employee or give an employee a very specific job, and here's your PD, this is what you do, and you don't go out of your lane. That's when people say, gee, my job's boring. Like,
Yeah.
I hate going to work. Like, seriously, I just go to work and get paid and I go home and enjoy myself. And that's where all the creative stuff and the fun stuff actually happens. Work shouldn't be like that. I love work. I
Yeah.
live to go to work because it's where I get the opportunity to make a difference.
Likewise, likewise.
Yeah.
That's why it's really invigorating chatting to you. So education really is like it's a traditional kind of industry if you think about it in terms of there's like set curriculum. So what's been the appetite for your work? Are there certain school leaders that are like, oh my gosh, they understand? Are they sort of your target, or do you have to do some work in convincing people this is a good idea?
There's a journey there, Leanne. So,
Yeah.
as we started our company just on a year ago now, so it's very early days for us. And our customers broadly are schools.
Yeah.
So we offer a SaaS platform which has an AI component to it, and the platform is for teachers, so it's teacher facing, and it's been designed to reduce their workloads, make their lives easier, create the space for them to actually enjoy teaching by cutting away some of those administrative tasks. But more than that, it's been designed to change their activity, to help them grow professionally. So they're teaching in such a way that they're not only delivering the content and allowing students to get good grades, but they're also activating creative thinking, which has the positive effect of increasing student engagement because students become more authentic or have greater agency over what they're actually doing and more excited about what they're doing because all of a sudden, instead of saying, well, the student saying to the teacher, tell me why I'm learning this. And the teacher saying, because it's going to be on the test. The student can start saying, I need to learn this because I need to solve this problem over here. And I can see the connection here. So they're
Right.
motivated to actually learn. The engagement increases. And as the engagement increases, learning deepens as well, becomes more impactful and results improve as well. So our clients are schools. So we offer a SaaS platform to schools. And already in a space of a year, I can say we have 4 schools that are joining us. And interestingly, we've just been meeting for the last 2 days for an organisation who operates or runs schools in China and Vietnam. And so there's a market there that's opening
Yeah.
up for us as
Yeah.
well, which is really exciting. So we're super excited about that opportunity. We build a product for any school across the globe. But schools are very conditioned. They're very industrialized. This is the way it's always been. And teachers tend to teach the way they were taught. They're very hard to shift and change. So the first schools that are joining us are the ones that can really see, you know what, it's about the kids. And that's the difference. It's
Yeah.
actually about helping these kids get a job when they leave school and enjoy and love life and make a positive difference to the communities in which they live and work. So they're the schools that we cut through early with.
Yeah.
When we talk to employers, corporates, they all get it straight away, like that,
Yeah.
bang.
Yeah.
That's what we need. So our investors are all corporates, and one of our key investors, now chairman, used to be the CEO of Verizon, and is on the board, and used to be on the board of Huawei, and is currently on the board of Saudi Railways. Like he's invested in this because, and he's the chairman because he gets it.
Yeah.
This is what I need in future employees. And schools aren't doing this, so I'm investing in this because this is actually going to make a difference to everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just, and this is probably circling back to what you shared at the beginning when you were just talking a bit about your history, is like the growth that you experience at your school. I'm just wondering, like when I go to, like if I was to visit a mine site, I go to the pre-start meeting, which is like 5 or 6 in the morning, and I can tell the culture of a site just by attending that meeting and just observing. Like in the first 10 minutes, I know what this site is like. What about you? I don't know if you visited other schools. Are there schools where it's so obvious that you can tell the attention is no longer on the students, that it's on like the compliance and the ticking and flicking? Are there some symptoms of like schools that are like, we know that you're student focused? Like, what are those kind of micro symptoms?
Culture is a real fascination for me. My PhD work was around leadership and trust, building cultures of trust, because we know by other evidence has shown that if you create a culture of trust, people feel safe. And then they're willing to take risks and they feel valued because they're taking risks and they're learning themselves. And then productivity, conversely, actually improves as well because everyone's willing to really get in and get involved in it, go outside their job description, help others. Well-being improves. And interestingly, in schools, when you have a culture of trust in a school, learning, academic achievement improves as well. So culture is a fascination for me. But one of the problems I'm seeing in education, and as I've been in education for 35 years, is over the last 2 decades particularly, and even the last decade, is schools have been hammered with compliance, absolutely hammered with compliance for all very good reasons. So, for example, when the NDIS was introduced in 2019, fantastic initiative by the Labor government at the time. Cannot question that, but nobody thought through the implications of its implementation in schools. So the Curtin University has shown that there's been a 90% increase in student administration reduction in the NDIS. So for a teacher on the ground who's got a child in their class who's got particular learning needs, they're spending so much time documenting the learner adjustments for that child, documenting, not teaching that child, that they have become resentful towards that child, causing me so much work. These are some of the micro symptoms that you mentioned there. When you walk into a school, you can get that sense that teachers have lost sight of that child. They've become resentful towards that child because that child is causing them an undue work burden. And teachers then have lost sight of why they became a teacher in the first place, because they want to make a difference to a child. They love kids, but now the workload is so burdensome. So that's one of the things that we've done at Vividus, is built a platform that strips that away, deals with that problem,
nice.
deals with all that issue around NCCD, evidence collection and audits and administration and yada, yada, yada. So teachers can get back to loving that child and teaching them.
That is such a heartbreaking story. Like the kid that they're resentful, like probably needs the most warmth and support and love, like the fact that that's the irony is like so sad. Yeah.
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 So you can get a feel for different schools as you walk into the mining site. You get a sense of the culture. The culture is set by the principal, the way the principal leads a school. 70% of an organisation's culture is created by the behaviour of the leader, and it flows down. So it starts with the leadership, but it's also then impacted by the things that people actually have to do now, the over-regulation, the over-compliance, the impact that it's actually had on people, and it's spoiled that relationship that teachers have with kids. In many cases, not all cases, in many cases, yeah.
I think it's the same thing. I used to work for a TAFE in the northwest of Australia in Broome. I worked for TAFE for 7 years, and I noticed like the amount of paperwork and compliance it just took over, and the teaching part was like 10% of the job, and the 90%, like you said, was everything else. It's probably like a use case for this in that sector as well, in higher ed.
It's gone a bit nuts, really, hasn't it? It's like, let's go back to the days when we could be responsible for ourselves.
I
and
agree.
If something happened and we had an accident, that's my fault. It's a bit of bad luck. I'll just deal with it.
I bring back those days. Let's do that. I actually did an episode about it I called it, instead of bureaucracy, I called it bureau-crazy, just replace the C with a Z. And like everyone was just like, yes, because I don't anything we do, it's like, why? You need to get like an A+. Like I was at the Department of Transport, I think for the 4th time, trying to just change a registration on this car. And I was like, look, I was just thinking to myself, I've achieved a lot in my career, but I am getting an F- on this paperwork. And it's like, I feel like I'm a capable human and I can't even do it. Like it's, in terms of the general population, like it's tough. I'm just curious, one last question for you around leadership, because you've had, so much experience around it. Has there been like a defining moment in your life where like, leadership has stood out for you, either by maybe someone else that's been a leader, or maybe you've had a time where you've been challenged in your role as a leader and you've had to, I don't know, like you've learned something from it?
Yeah, that's a question. You're opening the door for very long stories and illustrations. So, I speak a lot around the country around leadership and run leadership workshops. So, if I was to try and find one facet of it, I've studied leadership, I've practiced leadership, I've worked hard to get better at the skill of leadership. I first of all say that leadership is it's an action. It's not a position. A lot of people confuse leadership with a position. I've got a position of leadership, therefore I'm the leader. Where in actual fact, most times they're just the manager. They're just managing. And there's a difference between management and leadership. Ken Blanchard has one of my favorite definitions of leadership, and he's the author of 1 Minute Manager, one of the bestsellers in New York Times lists. But basically, he says anytime you're seeking to influence another person, you're actually using the act of leadership.
Mm.
So it's about influence. It's about, because if you're not influencing another person, you're not leading, you're in a vacuum, you're basically out there on your own. So all of us, parents, are leaders because you've got children, you're influencing teachers in classrooms, coaches on the sporting field, one-on-one coaches. Every time you ask a friend to go to the movies, you're seeking to influence an outcome. You're actually the act of leadership. The core to really good leadership or great leadership is building a culture of trust. So, and that really begins with understanding what your motivation is around being a leader. You know, what are you motivated by? And really great leaders are motivated by the development of the other person, not themselves. It's not
Yeah.
about me. It's about you,
Yeah.
Leanne. It's about what can I do to help you grow and get better or achieve the goals that we need to achieve or realize the vision that we've set to our organization. So the motivation is really important. And that's where trust can really start. If you get a relationship in the right order, then really great things happen. If I was to say one of the defining moments of leadership for me is probably the Royal Commission in institutional responses to child sexual abuse, of which the school I led previously was a case study number 34. And I share that story in my book, Principled 10 Leadership Practices That Build Trust. It's a mainstream book. You can buy it online or in bookstores. But yeah, that tells a story, and that really helped me reflect even more deeply about my own leadership and the impact I have on others.
Amazing. We'll put the link to your book in the show notes for this one. If anyone else listens to this and would like to get in touch with you, where can we send them, Paul?
My email address is paul@vividus, vivedus.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn. So send me a friend request and send me a direct message. Love to connect with you.
Amazing. Thanks so much for this. It's far ranging, it's short and snappy, but thanks for being part of it. It's been really great chatting to you. I'm so excited to see this expand across the world.
Thank you, Leanne. All right. Take care.